Got a good intro? Glasses off, maybe do a little of this. Hello, everyone. My name is Seven Song, and I'm going to be your host, teacher, someone trying to get comfortable in their chair for the next 2 hours. So let me just start off by saying there's a lot to cover. Everybody out there, I see Ingrid is out there, and many other people are out there know that there's no way possible to do a street medic training in 2 hours. Frankly, there's not even nearly enough time to do a partial of an herbal portion in 2 hours. I'll talk more about doing more classes later. And so the one thing I'm going to say now is I'm not going to be taking questions. I know it probably doesn't feel good. I'm going to tell you a place to leave questions for our next class. But for today, I just get lost giving questions. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a linear speaker. When I start to read different questions, my mind jumps to the question, has a hard time jumping back. So I would like to answer everybody's questions. But for today, if you have them, please write them down or type them in. And then I'm going to tell you a place to put them so that I could answer them for next class, and I'll go over the details of that. So welcome to my home in Ithaca, New York. Welcome. Herbalists love flowers, or at least I'm an herbalist protester, proof with the bandana, that loves flowers. So I like them as a backdrop. Also, they smell great. It's nice to have good smells in this home. So I'm in Ithaca, New York, which is about 5 hours north of New York City, Manhattan, Brooklyn, etc. Just a little bit about myself. So I'm a Russian Jew, second and third generation, depending how you're counting. So that's how long my family's been in the United States. And so that gives you a sense of what my ethnicity is. Often people might think differently because of whatever their perceptions of me are. But straightforward Russian Jew, Jewish mom, Jewish dad. So that's how I got here. That's how I got this. This is my classic Russian Jewish nose. I use he, him pronouns. I probably won't hear too many, but so we can just make sure everybody starts doing that from now on so people can feel comfortable everywhere using the pronouns they feel comfortable with. I run the Northeast School of Botanical Medicine. I'm not going to say too much about the school, maybe a little bit. I'll just say a little bit. So I run a school, the Northeast School of Botanical Medicine. You can just go online and type it in. I'm the main teacher. I've been running it since 1994. And so if you're looking for a snarky, sarcastic, non-spiritual herbal teacher, you got him, right? So that's the beginning of my dialogue. I've worked and I'm a founder of something called the Ithaca Free Clinic. Frankly, one of the things I'm most proud of in my life. You could go to the Ithaca Free Clinic. If you just type that in, Ithaca Free Clinic, you could find it online. It is an absolutely free clinic. As I said, I'm one of the founders. We've been open since 2006. I see a few hundred people every year. All medicines are free. All herbal medicines are free. So this is one day I would love to do a presentation on the Ithaca Free Clinic. Unfortunately, prescription medicines, pharmaceuticals are not free, but all the consultations from the doctors there. It's an integrative free clinic. We have conventional medicine, not doctors, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. Also, though, herbalists, chiropractors. If you're interested, look at us and look at our model. And again, I would love to have a discussion about it. I think that they're possible. The one thing I want to say, if you ask me questions, is I'm not the finance person. Like, I'm not the person who got the money for the rent or helps to pay the salaries for the 4 people that salaried. My job has always been a clinician and to keep the herbal section going and just be a part of something so there's continuity. I've also been a part of many protests in the past. Sometimes for longer periods, I was at Standing Rock, which was fantastic. The people there were great. What the United States was doing was not very good whatsoever. It was horrible, still is horrible. One of the things I liked at Standing Rock is a very set up herbal first aid section alongside a medical section and we just collaborated fantastically. That's not always the case. Often people sideline the herbalist and other alternative healthcare practitioners. And there was just a perfect example of like whatever the patient's desires were, we could try to suit them. We can all talk together. So I was there for nine days, which wasn't long. Many people there for months, but I feel like I learned a lot, hopefully helped a little. So I think that's it. So I've gone to lots of different places where human beings are put in terrible positions, hurt, damaged, controlled. And I do find that herbal medicine could be very helpful in these situations. I'm just going to excuse myself now. I get very thirsty talking to a computer. I don't know if computers suck saliva out of me, because when I talk to people who are live, maybe I'm sucking saliva out of them, which is not a good thing to do, especially currently, but I'll be drinking a lot of water. I got 2 jars lined up here. You can tell the herbalist by their mason jar of tea or water. So I'm going to go into it. Again, there's a lot of information. So today I'm only going to get into so many herbs. I want to cover a bunch of the intro stuff. But let me be very, very clear. Thank you, Karis, for pointing this out. This is not a street medic training. This is an overview of being an herbalist and perhaps some street medic training in a protest. If you really want to do this, and if you please do this, you need to be better trained. Even if you're medically trained, if you're a nurse practitioner, a doctor, a nurse, I would suggest going to these trainings, because how we interact, the sorts of meetings that we have, the sorts of collaboration that street medics often are part of, could be very different than the other medical situations that I'm in as far as collaboration. And learning to keep yourself safe. And so I'll go more into that, but I just want to, I was really glad that it was pointed out to me. This is not a street medic training. This is how to be an herbalist. And it's only one part of how to be an herbalist. If you want this, find other street medic trainings. Most of them that are happening now, of course, are online for safety reasons. I don't have any to offer. I'm going to go into how we can figure out how to offer more as we go forward. I want to say that in this class, it's unfortunately you just have to look at my face, or you can turn my face off. Michelle has a picture of Asclepias tuberosa up there, a butterfly weed. You can put that up instead, perhaps. I don't have any slideshows. I have a few things I want to show you, but it's not a slideshow or a sharing images kind of presentation. Hopefully by next week I can get some of that together. All right, so next, again, there's just a lot of intro stuff. I'm not going to skip it. And I'm not going to go over anything very fast. I would rather just, because right now I can do this weekly, and then we can record them and people can watch them, rather than, I already talk fast. I'm a downstate New Yorker. So I'm going to try to cover whatever information reasonably, thoroughly, half thoroughly, something like that. So next, follow-up class. So next Thursday, I'll be posting this. Next Thursday, I will be doing a class, this class, from 6 to 8, excuse me, 6 to 8. So next Thursday, June 11th, my notes are over there. That's why I keep looking here. I'll be doing a class Thursday, 6 to 8. Again, it will be recorded. It is fun to have some live people here, even though I can't see you, but all these, like where you're coming from, notes are fun. So that's it. I would like to, I never want to be patronizing, but so that's the scary but, isn't it? I would love to have voices of color talking on this webinar, this class as well. So any BIPOC people, any folks of color out there, what's happening is affecting you, much more dramatic, is affecting you. And so I would really appreciate people of color, Black, brown, other cultures, to lend their voice to next Thursday, if you could possibly do that. I would appreciate it if you can contact me first. I'm not going to try to tell you what to say in any way. I just want to make sure that there's enough time and figure out who's coming. So you can just write me. My email's all over the place. But once again, folks of color, please bring your voices to this, and let's hear it just gets confusing. Please say what you want to say. It could be about street medicine, how to keep yourself safe, or any of the things that I've gotten wrong, or could be better amplified. I want to say 2 appreciations that are really important. So Michelle Marlowe, hi Michelle, she's the Asclepias tuberosa. Michelle has been absolutely instrumental in me being able to do this. I started off thinking this would be simple. It's become very complex. I'm not like untech, I'm like tech savvy for somebody in their 60s, meaning I'm not very tech savvy whatsoever. Everybody in your 60s who's tech savvy, I apologize for that comment. So I just want to say it again. Michelle has been very, very important for doing this. She's still there in the background, and it's really helpful for me. This couldn't happen. So I want to make one more very big appreciation. These are important for me, and that's Mountain Rose Herbs. And so yesterday, so Michelle and I were trying to figure out how to stream this for more than 500 people, which is going to be pretty close because right now it's 454. And out of nowhere, Mason Hutchinson, if anybody knows Mason, who works at Mountain Rose, contacted me. And Mason of Mountain Rose Herbs offered to basically put up a bunch of money to make this available to 1,000 people and for the whole month, which is just, and they're not asking for any acknowledgement. And but I have to acknowledge that is incredibly kind of Mountain Rose Herbs, and so thank you. The other thing they did is they gave us more money to do closed caption for anybody who's hard of hearing that can't, or deaf, or any hearing impairment, can't hear me right now. So I'm going to say this because it'll be in transcription later, and I've sent it out. But the recording will have closed caption for anybody who needs to read this who can't hear this. And again, Mountain Rose will provide that. So that's it. Although that's a very important part. Trainings. So, all right, computer, stop sucking my saliva. At this point, I don't know any exact trainings that are happening. Well, I don't know many. I want to point out that you're welcome. I'm going to tell you where you can post other street medic trainings. There are many other people out there who are offering excellent work. And I'll go and give a specific way of how you can give that, invite that in, not putting it in a chat here, but doing it later so people can see it. Nicole Telks and Greta, I'm not really sure how to say your last name. I've always called you Grizz, but Greta Montagna and Nicole Telks are doing an online street training. So Greta and Nicole, and they've been long involved in this. And so there are other people that you can look for, and I'll post their links later. If you're just coming in again, I'm not going to be answering questions. I know it feels terrible to do that, but you can see there's just a lot of info to just get to the info, and I'm going to do that prelude right now. So this is being recorded, and then this is going to be posted on YouTube. When this is posted on YouTube, under YouTube, in the YouTube comments, that is the place to post your questions or comments or trainings or links or handouts. You could put them on Instagram. And of course, you could do whatever you like, but I'm trying to keep everything in one space because I use multiple social media, and it's just complicated to get it out to multiple social media. And so what I would like to do for the next class is answer your questions. So after Michelle posts this class on YouTube, write your questions in those comments, because I'm going to take them and corral them into specific kind of categories, which makes it much easier to answer them. And again, that's where you can post anything else. So please put all that information there. So this, I'm not going to focus. So protesting is overtly political. There's so much to the politics of this. And all I want to say is, so while this class is not going to focus on the overtly politics, it's on what we can support, how we can support people of Black and brown bodies, how we can support BIPOC people, how we can support people who are just stepped on by law enforcement and white supremacists and other agencies, and how we could be the most supportive we can be. So my goal here is to is to offer information, to enter protests, to just make this world a safer place for people of color. That is the simple goal of this. Unfortunately, I never keep anything simple. My mind is going all over the place, but that is what I want to do with practical ideas in this class. So again, next week, whenever I say next month, I mean next week. I'm hoping people, voices of color, can join on and talk much more from experience than I can. All right. So what I'm going to do is just cover some more basic stuff. And these are just really obvious things that are really important to know as we go into the details. Street medics get arrested. Street medics, the people who are often wearing red crosses, that is what we wear. You could wear a green cross. I would frankly wear a red cross. It is the symbol that's most recognized, who help out our protests. You are just as likely, if not sometimes more likely, depending on the venue, the event, of going to jail and getting physically hurt. If you're a person of color and you're a street medic, just like everything else in the world, you are more likely to get jailed and get injured. That's the reality of our world. And so I think the important thing is, as you form groups, is to make decisions, or however you want to make decisions on how to work in this situation. So everybody can get hurt as a medic, and everybody can be arrested as a medic. You have no immunity to that. And if you're a person of color in this situation, you could be targeted, just like in other situations. So I'm going to keep going from there. And I think it's really important that we be as supportive as possible for everyone involved in these, as a street medic and in protests in general. So I want to cover some very basic ideas of being arrested. I'm not going to go into detail. That's a street medic training, but I do want to say some things that are important that I think. When you become a street medic, one of your first questions is, are you willing to be arrested? And if you're arrested, will people know that you're arrested? And do you have safeguards and people knowing where you might be? So again, having an idea, there's lots involved in that, in getting arrested. And a lot of street medics, they want to be arrested to show signs of solidarity. So that's a part of it. So let folks know, if you're going to be a street medic or any protester really, where you are, people who are not going to be there, which could be very helpful in getting out of jail if that's what happens to you. So I'm saying as if it's a simple thing. It is not a simple thing. I want to just talk a little bit about prescription medicines. When you get arrested, everything is taken from you. Generally, like in these kinds of arrest situations, you keep your street clothes, but you're probably gonna have vests removed. But here's the thing I want to say. Your medications are definitely removed from you. It doesn't matter what they are. If you're diabetic and you have insulin in you, it is removed. If you have a heart condition, those drugs are gone. So there's no way around that. There's no way about getting arrested and not having your medications confiscated. So here's what I just want to say to this. Make sure that you have a few days medicines with you, and make sure that they have the prescription label, your most current prescription label on them. When you get arrested, they're going to take down, you should say, I have a chronic healthcare condition. State your condition. So there's a special record for this when you get arrested. And then what they're going to do is they're going to take your bottle of medicine and they're going to write it down. You cannot just ask for your medicine, right? Unfortunately, what they're going to do is take you to a medical service to give you the medicine if they think you need it, which of course anybody who's been arrested knows this doesn't always happen. So I want to be clear that if you have an ongoing medical condition that you need pharmaceutical medications for, there's a really excellent chance that you will not have them available to you if you are arrested. But again, there's a chance you will if you have the bottle, if you make it clear you have a chronic ongoing health condition, if you need these medicines, and that information will hopefully be taken down so that you can get your insulin or whatever medications it is, right? And have enough for a few days because you might be detained for a few days. One of the important things that's going to be covered hopefully next week or the week after, whenever we have a new class, is aftercare. So one of the things that often doesn't get discussed is what happens when you get out of jail or just get out of the protest. Many people are not arrested, but damn, there's a lot of trauma, right? You might have been physically injured. You might have been psychically injured. I mean, a lot can happen at a protest, even if you're not arrested. And so there's a lot of post-care that herbalists and other healthcare professionals can offer for folks after a protest. So you can just ask around as people are leaving. You can look for people who might not feel well. You can just ask, you can just shout, you know, as things are breaking up, or if you see a group of people saying, my name is Seven Song, and please don't use my name. My name is Seven Song. I'm an herbalist that works here. Is there any way you think I can help you later? Or just work with your affinity groups. So I should say two more things that are important here. The first is about herbal medicine. When your herbal medicine gets confiscated, you're not going to get any herbal medicine. The law enforcement is not going to consider that an important medicine, even if you take herbal medicine and it's helping keep a chronic healthcare condition in check. That's just not going to happen. You get your medicine back, but you're not going to be able to take it while you're detained. The next thing is about infiltrators. So I plan to get onto herbs. I'm already 20 minutes in. I apologize, but I'm going to cover some of this stuff. Everybody's concerned about everybody who does first aid, there is always infiltrators. So infiltrators are sometimes law enforcement. Infiltrators are sometimes antagonists. They're always around. The reason I'm saying it now is because if I say, hi, my name's Seven Song, do you want to contact me after this, right? I think a whole heck of a lot of people do not want to contact some person that they don't know and have no idea who they are. So there's no way to prove it. There's no way to prove you're an infiltrator. I have crazy stories about people getting infiltrated with people they implicitly trusted. So that happens. That's just something to know. So that's going to be a part. Like, so if you're doing this and if you're going to help somebody, Red Crosses or not, there's going to be people who don't want to interact with you because they are nervous that you're going to do harm or you're there for all the wrong reasons. And there are plenty of people at every protest that are there to cause disruption and harm and make it much harder for things to go either peacefully or, you know, or for people to they just mess stuff up. So, excuse me, I'll go through more notes. All right, next, COVID-19. So COVID-19 is still happening. So today, for the first time, somebody I work with works with somebody who was tested positive today. So I'm 2 steps away from potentially having COVID-19. Everybody I know has been still fairly socially isolating. So somebody has COVID-19 tested positive, somebody who works with them works with somebody that I work with. And so I'm going to have to see. So I'm just saying it exists. It's definitely not going away. It is impossible to avoid in a protest, right? Shouting, loud yells, lots of physical touching, which is possible. You know, you get a scrum of people, you know, police move in or just a group of people move in. And then all of a sudden you're in a group of people and there's anybody who's carrying, asymptomatic or not, you have it. So there's really no way to avoid it. Of course, you can wear a face mask. The rigor at these things anyway. I was wearing this one today because once we found out COVID-19 exists in our territory, even with people I socially distance from, I'm just trying to stay very safe. So you can wear a mask. You can wear a strong mask. They're legal to wear right now, which is not always the case. So protect yourself that way. Monitor yourself when you get home. Just to expect that you potentially were exposed to COVID-19 and monitor yourself. I know there's, you know, I mean, many of us come back and there's families and friends that we interact with. But just, so there's no easy answer to this. But of course, things you can do is you can carry bottles of sanitizer, you can wash your hands, you can make sure to not touch your face. Those things still exist and those things are still true. There are some herbs that are helpful for COVID-19. All right, sorry. COVID-19 can be a deadly and very dangerous disease. There's nobody telling me to say this. I feel like I say that like somebody's like, Seven Song, say the FDA warning. Nobody's saying it. It's just true. But for less vicious cases of COVID-19, where maybe you have chest tightness, but you're still your pulse oximeter, your breathing is still fine, but you're having other symptoms, there's lots of herbs, right? So at one point, herbs are not there at all. It's about medical intervention at that point. Pharmaceuticals, there's not many pharmaceuticals, unfortunately, but ventilators, etc. But there are more minor cases where herbs, and I'll try to cover those. I think I'll do them next week when we're talking about post-preventive care. So more questions for you. Again, hopefully I'll get to herbs in a little while, but it's going to keep going like this. So also it's recorded. You could space out. It's a beautiful day outside in upstate New York. So some things you should know about yourself, right, before you do this is, do you work well in stressful conditions? Because being a street medic is generally a stressful condition. And so there are three kinds of stresses. I mean, there's more kinds, but the three main kinds of stresses that can happen with these things is physical stress, hurting yourself because you're running around, you trip on a curb, you get injured by other people. Mental health distress, lots of anxiety, depression, all the triggering things happening around you. And then also that could be grouped or separated from emotional distress. So I'm just letting you know that if you want to do this, stress is a part of protests, and stress is a part of being a medic at these protests. If you want to help, there are many ways to help to not be physically at a protest. People sending donations to each other is one way, or just being a support line for somebody, saying, just call me if you have any fears and I'm here for you at any time of the day. So, but you should know that the stress is there as a medic. All right, so here are some basic preparations for this. Again, I suggest doing a street medic training. All of us I can't imagine anybody who's done street medic training that hasn't been appreciative of it for that. Forming networks, so these are preparations. Forming networks with other people so that you know who you're working with and going to work with. It also forms bonds of trust. It also allows you to mobilize quickly. So knowing a group of people that you're working with and having a collective, or any terminology you use for this, ready, so when the protest happens, you can call up your friends and mobilize and get there. We'll talk about supplies in a bit more. The next thing I'm going to cover in more detail later is you need herbs, right? You need medicine. Well, all right, take that back. There's actually often supplies there, and I'll come to them in a minute. But it's good if you can bring your own supplies. So supplies range from basic medical supplies, ACE wrap, vet wrap, Band-Aids, hemostatic powders, things to help people stop bleeding, splints, and then herbal remedies. There's many supplies. I'll cover some of those supplies as I go forward. So it is helpful to have, where are you going to get your supplies is really what I'm trying to say. So I want to go into that in detail, but it's good to come with some of your own, right? But if you can't afford them or you don't have access, there's often people that will work with you with them. Where you'll be also changes what herbs you bring. So most of the protests currently are in a city, or in cities, many cities, fantastically many cities. So that changes some things, like the kind of conditions you see in a city, but no matter where you are, dehydration is always a thing. So, you don't have to carry lots of water. Often the food and bomb stop people come. So hello to everybody who's ever worked food and bombs, and thank you. But the food and bombs people often bring food and water because they're both very helpful for people in protests. But you're going to need supplies. And so how are you going to acquire those supplies? Again, I'll come back to this in a bit. This is just your preparations. Setting up your first aid bag. There's many different ways to set it up. I'm going to point the this camera. I hope it worked. You're going to see this. I just want to show you my first aid bag. All right, let's see if we can do this. I'm looking at it, so it's not coming out perfectly. Sorry. Now I'm unplugged. So this is my first aid bag. And I can show you pictures of it later. Oh, heck. Hey, Michelle, I'm out. I'll be back in a sec, hopefully.
Okay.
You could just, I guess people could still hear me or not?
Yeah, I've got to kick some people out too. So, whoa. Okay, Michael, yeah, you're gonna go.
Michelle, what do I do to get back on?
You're there. I see you.
Oh, ooh, sorry. Hi, folks. Glasses times again. All right. Thanks. Sorry. I lost my connection here. You can see how tech savvy Seven Song is. You see how much he talks about himself in the third person. Not usually a good sign. All right. So that's my first aid bag. That's my run bag. Let me point out that there are two different ways to be a street medic often, and there's many ways. But two common ways is being a roving medic and being a clinic medic, or someone like myself is often both. So not at these quick protests that are just showing up now and often come and disperse quickly. These kinds of, I'm sorry, I lost my place for a second. So at protests that tend to be, I'm not in a big city right now, so I don't really know what's happening, and I'm speaking without knowing a lot. But often there's a clinic set up somewhere. They're often in the basements of churches or upstairs in churches that are liberal churches. That's there because there's lots of churches. And that's often where supplies are stashed and people are brought to who need medical attention, but not an ambulance or a hospital. So it's also a place where you can resupply. So a lot of protests have a clinic. I'm just calling it a clinic. I mean, it's just set up. It might be set up for a day or a couple hours. It's a pop-up clinic, sometimes though for days on end. It's a good place to check in when you first get there. Street medics, though, should work together. I wouldn't just be a roving street medic by yourself. If people don't know you, they're going to avoid you, right? Because they don't know who you are, and having red crosses on you does not make you a safe person. So you want to check in with the other medics. Again, medic trainings go into this. So you can work in the clinic. Clinics sometimes get busted, though. Clinics get, sometimes, it hasn't happened in a while, but the World Bank one in Seattle a long time ago, that was one of the first places targeted. So, so they're not always safe, but they're often a little bit out of the fray of the protest, and it's where, but you hopefully walking distance, where you can go and bring your supplies. So you can work in a clinic. The other thing is being a roving medic, and that means you have your pack on you, and you're treating people who are at the protest themselves. I tend to go back and forth. I just feel my training does both. Also, I like to be a part of the protest itself. So I like to be involved. When you're at the protest, never carry your water in glass. That would be a terrible idea. Glass breaks, you get hit, you fall down, you're running, you don't want to break glass. So use plastic there or steel. So I totally lost my train of thought there, so I'm just going to keep going. So it's best to work with other people. Again, get to the protest and go to a medic clinic or just meet up with other people. And it's much better to work as a team. So we'll talk more about teamwork in a bit. Something you're going to consider is how much can you physically carry on your body. Sometimes people are just really weighed down. The great thing about having lots of stuff is you can treat a lot of people. The problem with having a lot of stuff is it's hard to get out of a situation. And remember, everything could be confiscated, right? Often it's given back to you, but we see what's going on and you're just hoping you get your stuff back. So one of the ideas is how much can you afford to lose, right? So if you're bringing expensive equipment, you have a really good stethoscope or other equipment, it's a chance that it can either get broken or confiscated. Again, often comes back, but you have to understand that it can be a loss. And then just making the decision, are you okay with being arrested? So I'm going to skip some of these. I have so many points. So for me, like what's becoming obvious is the thing that I don't really think about initially is like, what herbs do I need? What I think about initially is, how do I be a better person in these situations? And so I'm trying to cover that. How do I be a helpful person? How do I just not come into a situation kind of clueless and suck out everybody's energy asking all these questions when you can go to a street medic training and learn this and then be much more of an asset. There's always questions to be asked. So here are some other important points. So patient care is your priority. Herbal medicine is secondary at best. I'm going to say that again. Patient care is your priority. So so I use the word patients. People care I work in a clinic. I'm just used to the word patients. People care is your priority. So when you're seeing somebody and they need your help, whether they got injured, they were physically traumatized, they have an asthma exacerbation, whatever it is, your first thing is not what herbs do you give them. The first is like, how do I get this person? How do I help them? And one of the things is often removing them from a situation, maybe hydration, but don't go into every situation if you're an herb person thinking herbs are the answer. Herbs are helpful, just like other things are helpful, but often just getting a person to a safe place is way more important than what you're going to give them while they're there having whatever condition they have. So I'm going to keep going here. So not only are street medic trainings good, but basic first aid training is really great to have. Like just knowing your red flags, like if somebody can't follow your finger when you're moving around and their eyes are not following, like they probably need hospitalization or medical attention. There's a chance they might have a concussion. So, but there's a number of red flags. I see that Ingrid Bauer is here. Ingrid is a medical doctor and also a very active protest person. And I'm sure Ingrid could do a class and be excellent at giving red flags, probably many other people here. But you should just know basic first aid, right? So, I'm trying to change the wrong screen. I'm just trying to skip. I have 26 pages of notes. One of these times I'll try to put them, maybe make some kind of terribly long-winded handout, meaning a handout made by me. Sorry, just give me a moment here to scroll through. All right. What works really well is having multiple modalities, multiple healthcare disciplines when you're treating people. So people have different knowledge bases. It's not always what their conventional medical training is, because you can have somebody who's just done a heck of a lot of training in first aid that's never gone to a medical school, but clearly is well skilled. So for instance, whenever you're going out, like it's always helpful to have at least one or two people that are good at diagnosis and assessment. That's a very important part of it. Some people who are really good at maybe logistics and knowing what to do, what's going on, but really, I'm getting away from myself. It's just really helpful to be around other healthcare practitioners. So other healthcare workers, maybe somebody does body work, has a good idea of what to do in this situation, a doctor, a nurse. So when I go to these things, when not in crisis time, I'm just constantly asking questions, which you can ask anybody. You know how often I ask annoying and constant questions. So this is going to be a very important part of this. What you want to be able to do is, you like going out with a scrum means multiple people, it's a rugby term, a scrum of people that are all herbalists, that could be good, but why not diversify your team so you have multiple skill levels to help in different situations? So that's what I suggest when possible. Sometimes when there are meetings during the protest, before the protest, you can go to the meetings and ask people if they're willing to work together with you. It's really almost always, it's pretty much always best to have two people. I want to add one more person to your team. That could be you or somebody else, and you need a communications person. So at some of these protests, again, many of them are spontaneous, they're spontaneous. But you as a street medic could sometimes, what we do is we get together beforehand and we establish different roles. There's often a communications station someplace, and they're getting information like, where are people being injured? Where's a safe place to go to? Where's a dangerous place to go to? Where are you needed, right? Where's law enforcement coming from at this point? So in these situations, it's, if you have an earpiece and a mic, or you can use a phone, you can communicate and find out where you're most needed, or if it's a situation that you should be getting out of. So I hope that makes sense, but there's always a communication. I'm not great. If I have an earpiece in, like, I don't know if you've ever gone to a protest and you're listening to communications, it's often very interesting. I mean, but it is distracting, and I am an easily distracted person unless something's right in front of me. So I just want to warn people who are more like me that if you have an earpiece and you're listening to communications, that it can be distracting. You might be taking your attention away from your local environment as you're listening to what's around you. But it's great to have somebody because it helps mobilize you to where you're most needed. Anytime you're on your phone or talking to anybody, just assume you're being listened to. Just like right now, I just assume I'm being listened to by people I probably would rather not listen to me, unless it's helping change them to be better people, and then hurrah for that. Remember that if you're in a city and it's not shut down at the moment, there are many medicines all around you in stores. So there's lots of herbs that are in supermarket shelves, everything from cayenne pepper to turmeric and ginger. So turmeric and ginger are anti-inflammatories. I'll leave off cayenne pepper for now because it has a lot of side effects. It burns. There's fennel that could be really good if you're bloated. So one thing I'll talk about later, maybe next week or whenever, is care for the street medic, right? Because street medics have their own set of health conditions, or a different set, or they have other health conditions that are important that might need to be treated as well. So also the other things that you can find in these situations are things like rubbing alcohol as a disinfectant. You can find antibacterial soaps if they're still around. So don't forget that there are medicines that are often inexpensive and widely available for sale all around you if you're in a city or an environment that has stores that are currently open during the protest. Next, it's really important to learn how to keep a calm head. Things get crazy and scary, and the medic should be one of those people that takes a deep breath, unless there's gas around you, and learns how to facilitate, like, being calm yourself at least, so that you're better able to treat people. A street medic that is very scared, I mean, it happens. If it does, just take yourself out, go to a safe place, relax until you reach a place where you can help other people. Though for other folks, like your steadfastness, like your ability to be calm, or like you don't have to be incredibly calm. You don't have to be doing any ohms or anything like that. But you're talking to people, and when people are injured and triggered, you could continue that process, or sometimes you can alleviate that process by who you are and how you are acting. So whatever you do to keep yourself in check, I suggest doing that, taking deep breaths, whatever it is for you. Those are some ideas. So next, everybody should understand the limitations of whom they are as a healthcare practitioner. You know, I have a set of skills that I feel very comfortable in. There are other things, like when somebody has any eye problems, maybe getting tear gas or gas in the eye, there are things you can do. But if somebody has like neurological eye problem, it's totally out of my scope. There's many, many, many things that just happen sometimes while I'm working that it's not me. And so everybody should understand the scope of their practice, the scope of your knowledge, not the scope of your practice. It is the scope of your knowledge to help reach out and find the right person for them. Remembering that if you are in the heart of a protest, there is a really good chance that no ambulance and no EMTs, unless they're part of the protesters, are going to help you, unless there are other medics. So it's not always easy to do that, but it's important to understand that, you know, how much you know and how much you don't know in order to help facilitate better healthcare to anybody that you're working with. When you're working with people, especially once you start to give them herbs, believe it or not, I will eventually get to herbs. Once you're working with people, anything you give them internally could alter their biological processes. You can change them, right? And it could, more importantly, it can interact with the medications that they're on. This is a very large topic that I'm not going to go into much here at all, very little. But I do want to point out that herbs can interact with medications. Anybody at a protest, anybody anywhere could be on many medications. So sometimes you can ask what medications they're on. In general, giving people herbs once or twice does not disrupt their medication timetable. It doesn't disrupt how the medication is working, but we're just at the beginning. We're just at the beginning of understanding of how we're not even at the beginning of understanding how herbs interact with pharmaceuticals. We are like nowhere, we're like a million steps away from understanding how plants interact. I know you read stuff about St. John's wort, I don't know, milk thistle, kava kava. Those things, the studies are mediocre at best. And then, you know, even if you're saying that, people are on polypharmacy, multiple drugs. So this is really a tricky situation, right? Is giving people herbs. I mean, water is a very safe bet. Probably most foods are a very safe bet, but not all herbs once you start to treat people. So that's one thing. The next thing is just understanding that when somebody's injured, they're not always thankful for people being around them. They are triggered very often. And if you come to them quickly without introducing yourself and moving in slowly, they can definitely lash out, just as you might lash out if you were injured and all of a sudden someone you don't know comes charging into you. So just be very cautious when approaching people. They are often very upset for very good reasons. And you want to be somebody who's going to be supportive of that person. So there's just lots of ways to do it, but basically don't just, you know, unless they're unconscious, in which case you're probably going to get support, right? Anytime anybody's unconscious, is just, you can announce your name. Hi, my name is Seven Song. I'm a street medic. I see that you're injured. I'm giving some distance. I would really like to help you. I've been trained as a street medic. Do you want assistance? Because maybe they don't want assistance. If they seem incoherent, if they seem like they're a little out of it, I would just give some space until you feel like it's important for you to step in and help out in that situation. So those are some ideas there. And moving forward. The next is about storage. So I just want to say that herbs take up a lot of space. And so when you're good, if you're already an herb person, your houses like mine are just like 2/3 of them is occupied by plants and tinctures and medicine and equipment. Maybe you're set up for it. But as soon as you want to do this, especially with herbal medicines, you're going to need to try to figure out how to have enough storage in your home to just store the stuff. So if you need it, because you don't want to buy it, right? Herbal medicine is expensive. One of the reasons I work at a free clinic, because herbal medicine is just inaccessible. It's like $9 for a tiny little bottle of something that probably lasts a few hours best in one of these situations. So you need storage at home for this stuff because you want to accumulate donations. We'll talk a little bit more about donations. Also, you need storage where you're going. Like my backpack, you know, the largest bottle in my backpack, which is fairly large, is what I call trauma oil. So it's a soft tissue injury oil. I know people are getting excited. He's finally going to talk about herbs, but not yet. Hopefully you get there. So the trauma oil is I don't know, 16 ounces probably. And it won't last that long. But that's the biggest bottle. The majority of tinctures are in 2-ounce bottles. And so I have to have storage to do refills because my pack weighs about 21 pounds. That's about the most I can physically carry at any one time. And my back can definitely take this, hurts when I use it, carrying heavy stuff and running around. So So storage is going to be an important part of using herbal medicine, both at your home and when you get there. I mean, you can also store stuff in cars. Just realize if it's hot outside, these rubber things, they break down really easily in heat, and then they release the rubber. You probably have done this. If you've ever had a tincture, you can taste the rubber in the tincture, and then I just throw it out. I just don't want to take doses of rubber in my medicine. So they do make, I think they're called monprene droppers that actually are made from a substance that doesn't break down and doesn't dissolve with alcohol, which these can as well. I think monprene or monoprene. There's one company that sells those. The other thing is all your salves will be melted. Oils, with a lot of heat, they just oxidize. So I'm just saying, if you're leaving your medicines in your car, make sure to cover them or put them in the coolest place in your car so that they don't break down as fast. I just want to point out, like, this is going to be very obvious to everybody, but there's a lot of there's photography. You can photograph any law enforcement action legally, and legally, which doesn't always happen, people are murdered. So, but legally, you can photograph people, you can take videos, and they cannot take your camera, and they cannot erase your information. So in real life, different things happen. But you can see even with current videos that even people who are right there where they're clearly doing an injustice to a human being, that their people were able to photograph and kept their photos. And so I'll put a link. There's a great page on the rights of photography in public places. You, of course, can always be photographed too. If you're in a public place, you could be photographed, and you will be photographed. You'll be photographed, you'll be monitored, your name will probably be known. So that's the reality of doing public demonstrations, is putting yourself out there like this. Like, it makes me concerned, like doing this, to be targeted, frankly. So I also, though, want to be as helpful as possible with the abuse that's happening with law enforcement on people of color. So keep going from there. So everything's to be confiscated. I said all that. That stuff is all legal. You can get there. There's clothing that's really helpful. I'm not going to go into the clothing now. I can go into it, but really you should. So the easiest way to put red crosses on you is red duct tape. So you buy a roll of red duct tape, have that at home, and then you put it on your shoulders, you put it on your backpacks, you put it on your hip pack. You want to be identified. It's not so much, frankly, for police, because again, you could be targeted, but it's for other people to recognize you and hopefully feel comfortable with them treating you. There's lots more of attire. You always want something that you can throw up over your nose and mouth, though. This is not going to help, though, getting gas. This can be very, very minimal. Another thing that you should get are good goggles. Good swim goggles work really well. So that, so don't, like glasses, they could help a little bit, but what happens is it gets under. Most of the gases are powders. Like they're not really gases, right? They're powders that are diffused in aerosols. I'm not really sure of the proper word, but it's not just a diffuse gas, right? So you have small amounts of stuff, like rubbing gets it in you further. And so a glass can actually get in there. Your contact lenses, you should wear glasses and take out contact lenses when you go to any protest. Contact lenses, if you get gassed, really can injure your eyes. If you do get gassed and you're wearing contact lenses, you take them out and throw them out. I know they're expensive, but I've never read anything that says different than that. So please be careful for that. But what works much better are like, I bought these like, what's the word? Steampunk, because I'm a sci-fi steampunk fan, I admit it. So I got kind of these steampunk goggles that really surround my eyes well and go around me. And so at least my eyes are protected so I can see better if this happens and get out of the situation. But that's what I would suggest. There's lots of good goggles. If you want to see, I feel embarrassing in saying this, but if you want to see like a lot of people that wear really good goggles, so I'm not advocating Burning Man. I did go to Burning Man. This is a confession. If you want to read, I wrote a blog about Burning Man, which is titled, not entitled. I may be entitled. This is titled, I went to Burning Man, so you don't have to go. So I'll get some hate mail about that, maybe. So, but the thing I did learn about going to Burning Man, which has crazy amounts of dust, is there are lots of people making excellent goggle choices that some of them look pretty cool and some of them are very inexpensive. So that's where I went to learn my goggle fashion etiquette. All right. There's other gear you might need. We can cover some of it just quickly. If you're going for more than, if you're traveling from out of town and going, you need sleeping gear and probably a place to sleep. Food and cooking supplies. This is a thing that we'll talk about more later, not in this class. But cooking supply, like if you are specific in your food needs, there's a great chance that that won't get met, right? So if you have food intolerances, there are just foods that are just bad for you, bring food or figure out something or have a house where you can cook. I mean, food is important. Like your nourishment is, as a street medic, helps you to be more active. Eating foods that are bad for you in whatever way and cause gas and some mental confusion or try to be avoided. But I'm saying, having gone to them, these things are often not available. So you want to make sure that you have access to food that's good for you. And of course, bring your own medications, whatever they are. Whatever medications you take, whether they're mental health medications or heart medications or thyroid medications or blood sugar medication, whatever they are, bring your medications. Make sure you have them. Remember, if you don't get arrested, you will have access to them, and you don't want to be without your medications during a time of high stress. So going along, I'm going to skip the legal stuff, skip the medication stuff. And so I'm going to go to herbal medicines. I'm going to cover a couple of herbs, but this is a very preliminary class so that I can then just talk about other herbs. I'm going to put my glass up for a minute. So I can talk about other herbs. So I can talk about herbs in much more detail. So remember, if somebody is showing ill health, before you give them herbs, ask them what's wrong. For instance, if the person is hypoglycemic or diabetic, food and sugary foods, if those are different. Hypoglycemia, you could have hypoglycemia with diabetes, but for diabetes, you want to make sure that it's not herbs that they need, but they might need nutrition. They might need sugar, for instance. This is just one of many ideas. And you can also ask people if they have their medications on them, because sometimes in the stress of these things, in the stress of a protest, people forget to take their medications. Like, so it's 9 o'clock at night. You normally take it at 8 o'clock at night. It's something that you need on a very regular basis. The person might have it on them and just be forgetting to take it. So you can ask people if they have their medications. Other things to consider for people is if they have asthma. Asthma absolutely gets exacerbated. Exacerbated means made worse at protest and other situations. The reason for that is gases themselves, pepper sprays and tear gas sprays can make it really increase asthma exponentially, dangerously. But also stress exacerbates many people's asthma as well. So you want to, there's some herbs that are really helpful for asthma, but they might have an inhaler on them. So. So I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff that I'm going to do next week. So, you can skip next week. Next week, I'm going to talk more about some other things like how to arrive and how to set up and post-preventive care. And I guess, once again, any BIPOC people, folks of color, people of color out there who feel comfortable being on this, I would love to invite you. I do invite you to bring your voice into this class next Thursday from 6 to 8 Eastern time. If you can get in contact with me beforehand, I would very much appreciate it so that we can just figure out the best time, best strategy. I'm not telling anybody what to say or do. I just want to figure out the logistics, which will probably fall on Michelle's shoulders really once again. So I want to talk a little bit about distributing herbal medicine, and then we're going to talk about specific herbal medicines. We're 1 hour in. So the next hour will be more focused on herbal medicines. I'm hoping this is helpful. I can't really tell because I'm talking to myself. But I'm hoping everybody who's finding this, at least some of the information seems valid or useful for upcoming situations. Yeah, I'm talkative. All right. So one of the things that can get complex is distributing herbal medicines. It's really uncommon that people just need medicines once, right? So you have to have a way of distributing, of giving people herbal medicines for later. And I'm going to cover some of the ways to do that. There's also many excellent herb schools around the country, and many herbalists I know are very active. So there's Sam Kaufman, for instance, in San Antonio, Texas, who's very active in first aid skills. And street medic is just first aid in a really high-strung environment, right, or a dangerous environment. But there are many herbalists and many herb schools around the country. And, this is just a basic couple hours of talking about herbs, not even a couple hours at this point. And so I really suggest, if you're interested, going to an herb school. They're all online now. I would suggest for some people who can wait, is that I think so I'm doing some Zoom classes myself for my school, but it just doesn't compare. The beauty of it is people can be anywhere and it can be recorded, definitely. But there's a whole other aspect of teaching anything, like right now, that in person just conveys so much more information. Plus there's back and forth, which does not happen so easily online. So I'm saying, look at different herb schools. And a quick trolling for my own is I'm in Ithaca, New York. I've been doing it since '94, but there's many excellent herb schools in the country. So look at any of the ones around you. Just talk to the teachers. Most of them are just one or two teachers. And so it's best to know, like, you have a good connection with that particular teacher. So how do you distribute herb medicines? Well, one of the ways that I do it is I carry these. So this is a 1 ml, or excuse me, not 1 ml. This is a 1 ounce or 30 ml bottle. It doesn't have a dropper because it has to be cheap because I'm giving them away. This costs about 13 cents each with the cap. So it still costs money. I usually bring a few hundred with me to any event that I have. And what I do is I add some amount of medicine into this, and then I always have water on me, and then I add water depending on what the dilution that I want is. So I know that this is very non-specific information, but that way the person can take it. I also have labels, and that's a pretty important thing because it's very hard, even with the indelible markers, the ones that don't come off easily, it's hard to write on the bottles and hard to see, and they rub off. So this takes time, and in the thick of it, you can't do this. But in a clinic or a little bit later, you can do this. So you can give the person, so they're having an asthma attack, and so you give them herbs and it helps them, but there's a good chance that asthma is going to come right back, right? I mean, as soon as the stress comes by or the triggers or the gas or whatever happens next. So you want, if the herbs help, I'll cover herbs that could be helpful for that. You want to be able to give it to them. So these have been the cheapest I've found. You can maybe find cheaper, but they're, again, about 13 cents with the cap. I put some amount, I don't fill it to the top with herbs. That would be 1 ounce, and I'd be finished with my bottles. And then I tell people to take it by the capful. A cap is approximately 3 milliliters, 1/10 of an ounce. I'll say it again. A capful in this cap is about 3 milliliters. This is 30 milliliter bottle. If you put an ounce, this is 1 ounce, and this is like 1/10 of an ounce, so 10 of these. Fill this up. Or you can put it into dropperfuls. This is about 1.5 full droppers. So if I fill this up 1.5 times, it will fill this cap, 3 milliliters. So that's a pretty strong dose for a medicine. So you can, because you're going to have two things on your label. The main one is going to be your dosage. And so people are like, how do I take it? And you can say, take it by the half cap full, 1.5 milliliters, or approximately close to a full dropper, a little bit less, or a full capful. I'm just going to write all this info. I mean, but basically it's half, 1.5 mils to 3 mils. 3 mils is 1.5 dropperfuls. And then, so half of that in droppers is what half a dropper, half a capful. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with my capfuls. So I'm going to say it again. When this particular one is filled, it's 3 milliliters, which is about 1/10 of an ounce, or 1.5 of these filled to the brim. one filled to the brim and then half filled. So that's a strong amount of medicine. Often what you can do is give people half capful increments so that they can take it with them. On it, I put a label. The most important thing, so you need a pen that doesn't run off, because alcohol will take ink off. So if you use an ink pen, pencil just doesn't write well. And then you write the dosage is the most important. There's two other things you can write on your labels that you give for your to-go bottles. One of them is your name. And so why would you do that? So the reason you would do that is so if the label gets obscured, they know your name and can ask you for the medicine, or if they liked you as a street medic and want to contact you at the event, they can say a 7-song here, I forgot how to take this, right? Or I made a mistake on the label. You could also put the ingredients, like what herbs are in there, which is nice. It's a little less important because often there's times when you're running around. If you're not running around, you have lots of time to do all of this. So with these protests currently, because of the immediacy of the necessity of these protests that's happening. But if these things start to move further and become bigger, but more staying power, in other words, they go on for days on end, there'll be a clinic where you'll have time where people will come in and you can make the labels for them. Dosage. So a half capful twice a day, a half capful as needed for symptoms. Make sure before you write it, let the person know what you're giving so they have an idea. But this is how I do it. Somebody asked me, I saw quickly, I don't really like the company that I've been buying them from, so I have to find a new company. It's their politics. So I want to find a company that sells them cheaply, that I feel more in common with their politics. So also like the kinds of preparations. So let's talk about various preparations that you might be giving people. So the most important, let me take a breath. How y'all doing out there? Yeah, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. It's going okay. All the positive people are chiming in, thank you. All right. Thanks, whoa. Wonderful, thank you for this. It's intimidating. It's intimidating to go online and think you're going to be recorded and just be in this thing, be out there forever. I mean, I feel cautious in what some of the things I say, and I always say some stupid stuff some of the time because I talk without thinking too deeply about it. I'm a spontaneous speaker. So I definitely getting in Michelle. So Michelle Marlowe, sorry, I'm going to come back to the class in a minute. So Michelle Marlowe, my tech person who's made this whole thing possible, is also my hand holder, my Oklahoma hand holder, whenever I start getting all worried about the presentation. So thank you for that as well, Michelle. All right. So I want to talk about preparations. Again, I know that some of you probably came to learn about specific herbs, but I'm going to keep going with this, and then next Thursday, and it gets recorded. I mean, so you can go and have dinner now. If I was to go swimming, it's a beautiful time, or more importantly, go to a protest, and let's change the way that things are to make it safer for people of color, right? And yeah, I'm stopping right there and saying this is important, and hopefully the amount of people that are protesting now and are showing their faces and showing their solidarity will make a change. I really hope so. I, of course, also believe in voting, and so that we need to get rid of some people in politics who I don't have to name because they're really obvious. So, so choices are always difficult. All right, I'll move out of politics. So different forms of herbal preparations. So the first one is the most important to know because it's the one that can cause the most damage, and they're tinctures. So the vast amount of medicines that I have are in fact tinctures. So when I use the word tincture, I always mean a plant that's based in alcohol. And by alcohol, I mean drinking alcohol, which is called ethanol. So I'm going to say this once again. When I use the word tincture, I know that other herbalists use the term more loosely, and they might say a tincture in glycerin. Plant, excuse me, I got hair in my mouth. Plant that's in glycerin to me is called a glycerite. Language is important to me, and also specificity is important to me. So when I use the word tincture, I mean, there might be some glycerin in the tincture, but the majority of it is a plant that's extracted in alcohol. So this is crazy, which means very in this context, important. Many people don't drink alcohol. And for many people, alcohol is one of the most harmful substances in their lives. So let's talk about this for a few minutes, and then we'll talk about why I carry so many tinctures on me. So the reason is obvious. So people who are sober, who have stopped drinking because alcohol has been a problem in their life, small amounts of alcohol can start somebody drinking. Never put it in hot water. That just doesn't work. It doesn't work enough anyway. And also, who's carrying hot water with them in a protest? But even at the clinic, so just bring variable types of medicine for people who can't take alcohol. So this is how I do it. It's really straightforward. Every time I give anybody a tincture, any adult really, anybody that I consider an adult, I always say, this is a tincture, it's in alcohol. The word tincture means very little to a vast majority of people. The word tincture is in kind of an in-house word for people who use herbal medicines. So, so I say this is a tincture and this has alcohol in it. Is alcohol acceptable to you? So for a lot of people, frankly, often a lot of people take a step back like, whoa, because they weren't expecting their medicine to be in alcohol because pharmaceuticals don't come in alcohol. So if they say, I don't drink alcohol, then there's not. Also, if they're Muslim, many people who are practicing Islam also don't drink alcohol. So that's an important thing to be respectful of. And frankly, lots of other people, for many other spiritual and ethical and health reasons, don't want any alcohol in their body. Unfortunately, sometimes I don't have a lot of options. And so then it depends, but I will never give somebody alcohol who doesn't want alcohol in their body. So that it's every time, I'm gonna say it again, it's an easy thing. You can practice it yourself. You can pick up something next to you right now and you say, hi there, my name's Seven Song, I'm a street medic. I wanna give you some medicine for your asthma, but it's in alcohol. Is alcohol okay? And the person's like, why are you asking me that? That's the most common question. And you say, because most people don't expect alcohol in their medicine. And if the person's like, well, that's not a problem for me, or if they drink, right, and they currently drink, it's not a problem for them. But if they're sober, or if they have any ethical or health related issues or religious reasons not to drink alcohol, have other things available. Mostly I have glycerins as a backup because we'll talk a little bit about glycerins. So why tinctures? And why not other forms of medicine? And so the main reason for that is tinctures are the second best menstruum. A menstruum is the fluid that sucks something out of it. Like the menstruum of tea is water. So the soluble, the fluid aspect of it. The menstruum, the fluid part of tinctures is alcohol. And so alcohol has two excellent components to it, making it very useful for herbal medicine. The first is that after water, it's the best solvent. So almost everything that's water soluble is alcohol soluble. There are exceptions, but not that many. So that's one very big advantage. But more important when it comes to it is that they're stable. So tea is a very non-stable product. If you make one of these things full of tea, not in glass at a protest, and you carry that around with you, and you give people tea. Tea is wonderful to have at these situations. I love being able to give tea. But the problem is, if you still have plant matter in that, or even without plant matter, and you're in hot weather for a couple of hours, it starts to go bad. You get bacteria growth in small amounts of plants in there, and now it's unusable. So I love tea. At many first aid clinics that I've been at, we have lots of tea for people because we're in a situation where we can keep the tea cooler. We keep them in those big 5-gallon igloo jugs that keeps them cool. So tinctures don't go bad in heat. In fact, they don't go bad. The worst thing that's going to happen is probably this rubber. If you keep it out in heat long enough, this rubber can break down. So they're great at extracting plant medicines, and they're very stable. So those are two big advantages. There's a lot more that can be said. Please study. There's online herb courses. There's books to read. There's many ways of learning more about herbal medicine. So the biggest disadvantage of tinctures is that people can't take them, or I don't want to give them to people that alcohol is a misery or a problem, or it's just something they want to avoid in their life. The other thing is they taste terrible. Like everything, I don't care what you say. You can put roses and Damiana. And so you can make a cordial, but a cordial is not a tincture. Cordials and brandy, I think they're not as strong because for reasons I won't get into now. So that's one thing. So the advantages of tinctures is they're stable, they extract herbal constituents out of them very well, and they're easy to mix and match. They're easy to exchange. So I can have a bunch of tinctures with me in a clinic, and I can make specific formulas for people because I have a bunch of things that are stable. I can do that, of course, with plants as well if I have teas, but I can have because the alcohol tinctures can take up less space where bulk tea takes up more space. I love tea, we'll get to it, but that's an advantage to it. It doesn't take up that much space to have a very strong preparation, and then you could just add different things to make a specific formula, but often I just carry, this one's not a formula, it's just Jamaican dogwood. I'm going to learn to do this eventually, that I have with me. So that's tinctures. The next one is glycerin. So I'm going to cover preparations. The next preparation is glycerin. The advantage of glycerin is that it's sweet. And even though it's technically an alcohol, it is an alcohol. I mean, it's not just scientifically, technically an alcohol. It doesn't act like alcohol. It doesn't make people feel drunk or different in their mental health or in how they're thinking. I have not yet ever seen it make people want to drink alcohol who don't drink alcohol after taking glycerin. So glycerin is a product you can buy. It's easy to not like Amazon. There's lots of reasons. Anyway, the cheapest vegetable glycerin I've ever found is on Amazon. If you have a Prime account or know somebody with a Prime account, you can get it by $24 for a gallon with shipping. So I'm telling you this, if you want to make glycerins and have been impeded by the price of glycerin, and actually the glycerin looks pretty good, at least the labels, they say non-GMO, non-sprayed. I hope for the best. I try to buy the cheapest ingredients possible that are good ingredients because I give medicine away for free. So my priority is going to be, because I can only spend so much to give medicine away for free. So that's where I get inexpensive glycerin. So glycerin's best advantage, it's very stable. It's not as stable as alcohol, but it lasts for many years. But it's not quite as good as a menstruum. It doesn't, because it's a very thick, viscous, it's thick fluid, it's pretty chock-a-block and saturated itself. It's not as easy to get stuff from the plant into the glycerin. I'm going to just tell you one quick way, but again, there are many ways to increase your glycerin extraction process. What I would suggest is often if I can, I blend them. So I have a Vitamix blender, but a strong blender. And then I will blend the herbs in the glycerin. That gives a better, just whirling around, getting hot, you have a better extraction. Then I put them in usually half-gallon canning jars. And then I put them in a hot water bath for an hour and a half. So first I put the plant in, and then if I can blend it, I'll blend it. Then after that's done, I put in a hot water bath and let it go in boiling water for an hour and a half. The heat allows better diffusion of the constituents from the plant into the vegetable glycerin. And it doesn't get hot enough to destroy the properties of the vegetable glycerin. And then I wait at least 2 weeks before very, very messily trying to press it out. And pressing out is a whole other thing to consider. Makes me scratch my nose. So, but glycerin is safe. It is very sweet. I find it gross. I find it cloyingly sweet. But it's safe for people who drink alcohol. People I know who have religious practices that avoid alcohol. I don't know anybody who avoids vegetable glycerin. And so it's good that way. You can also always tell people this is in glycerin to make sure. I actually have a patient at the free clinic who's allergic to glycerin. So that does happen. So that glycerin, and also you can add glycerin and alcohol together. Glycerin will mix in the alcohol. But what I'm saying right now is the big time to not give tinctures are when people don't want alcohol in their bodies. Glycerin, on the other hand, most people feel pretty comfortable about. An important thing to know about vegetable glycerin is that it does not raise blood glucose levels, or not discernibly. There have been studies. So when people ingest vegetable glycerin who are diabetic, any form of diabetes, it's safe. I mean, all the science I've ever read, it's not that much. I'll say though it's safe, and it has a very, put it to terms, it's very low glycemic index, even though it's very sweet stuff. So meaning flavor-wise. So glycerin is useful, not as great an extracting agent. So it's just a few more I want to cover that you're going to use there. You can always use capsules. Capsules have the advantage if they don't have something besides the plant. You can get vegetarian capsules, vegan capsules. Those, and you can get the ones that have animal gelatin, that they're made of animal gelatin. I tend to use vegetable capsules, vegetable gelatin capsules. Vegan capsules are just more expensive and tend to break down faster. The advantage of a capsule is that you can give it to people, and it's very easy to give it to them to go, right? So if somebody's having an ongoing inflammatory process and you give them something like licorice and willow for it, you can give them like 10 capsules, and then you can tell them to take 2 every 3 hours, and they can just stick the capsules in their pocket. Hopefully they don't open up. You can also I carry small plastic envelopes, small plastic bags, and I could put the capsules in there. That just is really easy to do. The disadvantages of capsules is a number of them. The first, it usually takes longer for them to work. Remember, when something's in alcohol, alcohol passes into your bloodstream very quickly, carrying the herbs with it. So tinctures have a quick distribution in your body after putting them in your mouth. Glycerin, a little bit slower than that, but it is based on sugars, and they do get absorbed. Capsules, you have a full powder. So the disadvantage is it takes a while. That gets your small intestine in generally, which takes a few hours to get from your mouth to your small intestine. It can take up to 4 hours, somewhere between 2 and 4, depending on what else is in your stomach. And then in your small intestine, it's going to get released. But the advantage, again, is like you're taking a whole plant. Powders and capsules, you know, capsules have powders, are the closest things to a nutritional supplement often that we have herbally. Like you don't really get nutrition in a tincture, maybe a vinegar, but a capsule can have lots of nutrition because basically, just think you're grinding up a carrot. They're not carrots. You're grinding up a carrot and you're putting it in a capsule and you're taking it, and basically you're just taking carrot powder or burdock powder or dandelion root powder or licorice powder. There's other advantages too. By putting powders in your body, this comes in very handy for people who have a lot of digestive problems, is that a lot of the plants that you take by capsule, when they get released, they have what are called polysaccharides. They have long chain sugars, and those things can coat the digestive tract and reduce some inflammation in your GI tract if you have an inflammatory GI process. So that's another advantage of capsules. So those are some advantages and disadvantages. The last one I'm going to talk about internally, these are all internal preparations, is tea. Tea, everybody say that at home. Tea is, there's a lot of advantages and there's some disadvantages of tea. The beauty of tea is like water is good for people, right? So where alcohol, glycerin, you know, capsules, no menstruum, but water is generally very good for many people. So you have water in there. Water is what's called the universal solvent. So water extracts more constituents, the stuff in plants, better than anything else, right? Alcohol is second, but really all the alcohol I use has water in it anyway, different discussion, but I never use 100% alcohol. I at the most use 95% alcohol, which has 5% water, but generally I use like 70% alcohol, which has 30% water. So back to tea. So water extracts the constituents of most plants. Really the only thing it doesn't do well is resins. Sometimes though you have to make a decoction, which is where you heat the herb in a pot, like you make soup with the herb, right? So when you make a decoction, you're basically putting the plant in a pot, you're adding water, and you're simmering it for anywhere from 10 minutes to much longer. Because a lot of plants, the constituents are bound tightly in the physical structure. And in order to release those constituents into the water, you have to boil the water. You need all that heat activity, those bouncing molecules that happen with heat to get the stuff to diffuse from the plant into the water. So the thing about tea, right? And so the other thing about tea is for many people, they love it, right? So my experience working in a free clinic is people who are more recently arrived to the United States from almost anywhere love tea much better than the people I know who have been in the United States for generations. So that's not always true. And of course, people who have always lived in the United States, often I find tea is really acceptable as well. So by that, I mean indigenous folks. So, but really people, people are just have their differences in whether they want to drink teas, which can be really nasty tasting. Many herbs are very nasty tasting. But the advantage is there's no alcohol, there's no glycerin. Water is, if you have a tap, it's pretty inexpensive, like free. But you need a heating element generally to make tea. So teas, the disadvantage is you need to be in a clinic or a situation where you can have a hot plate or you have a stove handy where you can make tea. I would suggest anytime you work in a clinic though, and you have access, bring those igloos. They're kind of expensive, like $30 each, but bring one of those 5-gallon igloos and make tea. Remember, you have to clean it out really well each day because that's gonna go rancid and then you're gonna get mold inside of that and you don't wanna spread that to anybody. So teas have a big advantage in that they don't have alcohol or glycerin. Many people really enjoy teas. Water is good for people. Many plants come out in water better than anything else. Some disadvantages, they're hard to make. It's hard to carry enough around. You also have to have a cup. Like since tea is not as strong, tea, I'm calling this tea, calling this tincture, the tinctures tend to be more concentrated in their fluids. This is just water. The tinctures tend to be more concentrated in the fluids, so you need less of them. So when you give tea, often you need to give, anywhere between like 4 to 8 ounces of tea, like, this much to like, this much to get a good solid medicinal dose. So those are some disadvantages and advantages of tea, but they're also just delightful. I mean, the tinctures, like they might feel good, they're good and healthy in you, but tea has a whole other nourishing aspect to it that pretty much I think no other medicine has except for like smelling flowers and drinking water. All right, on we go. So then there are multiple external medicines you can use. There are 4 kinds of external medicines that I tend to carry with me, herbal medicines for these events. And they are salves. There's really 3. There's 4. There is raw herb, which you can make compresses out of. There are salves, oils, and liniments. So I'm going to discuss all 4 of these right now. Also, I don't have any liniments on me. This is Valerian Tincture, another big bottle one. So I'm going to apologize. I think a lot of people were hoping that I probably talk specifically about herbs, but what I would rather do right now is be coherent and finish out this bit of this, and then next week talk way more specifically about herbs. So that's the way that I'm going to continue doing this. This, by the way, is me being at my best linear. I tend to think of myself as a very popcorn thinker, like bing, 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 bing. But I chased everybody else away. I've turned the ringer off my phone so that I can focus on you, my fellow protesters, and healthcare providers and people who want to make the world a safer place. So let's go through the 4 kinds of herbal products that are used externally. Some of these can be brought in the field, and some of these are only going to be at clinics or away from where the action is happening. So the first one is my favorite. I'm going to see if I can find a bottle. Not that I can really hold up a bottle of anything and say it's anything, can I? But I'm not going to. And they're called liniments. I feel like doing this over here. I feel like liniments are a way underused external herbal application. Liniments are plants based in rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on liniments because I think that they're extremely useful in protest medicine. And the reason I find them useful is because a lot of problems in protest, when people are protesting, is soft tissue injuries, getting hit somewhere, and that gets some swelling. You're running and you hit a curb and you sprain your ankle. You're grabbing somebody, your wrist gets bent. There's a lot of things that are soft tissue injuries. Soft tissue injuries are also called sprains and strains. Those are soft tissue injuries. So with soft tissue injuries, there's a bunch of herbs. There's like 3 or 4 that I find really helpful. They're all anti-inflammatory. They reduce the inflammation that's building, but not entirely, because you want some inflammation. That's your body's way of stopping more harm from happening. but so reducing some inflammation, which reduces some pain. Soft tissue injuries often have inflammation. Inflammation is one of the things that's signaling pain signals. So reducing inflammation can help the person become more mobile eventually, and also help reduce some of the pain. And the way that I like to give these anti-inflammatory herbs, so I'll just name a few herbs just to pretend that I actually will talk about herbs. And so some of my favorite anti-inflammatory herbs for these kinds of external applications would be things like arnica. Remember, this is being recorded, and I also have a handout. St. John's wort, and black birch, and willow. So those are some herbs. Hooray! 7 Song talked about herbs. And so with those herbs, I like to put them in an isopropyl alcohol solution. And so these are called liniments. So liniments, so there's 3 kinds of alcohol. There's drinking alcohol, that's called ethanol. There's wood alcohol, which is by far the most poisonous alcohol, and that's called methanol. And then there's rubbing alcohol, which is actually made, not propane, it's made from petroleum. Isopropyl alcohol is made from petroleum, the stuff that's pumped out of oceans. And that's called isopropyl alcohol. And liniments are made in isopropyl alcohol. There's actually a lot of advantages to them. So obviously hearing that they come from petroleum is a pretty good reason to not want to smear it on your body on a regular basis. So how to get to, so rubbing alcohol, if you're going to buy rubbing, so rubbing alcohol is isopropyl alcohol, the thing that's in liniments, plus water. I would just find you can just use rubbing alcohol, but get the highest proof you can. So what I do to save money, being the spendthrift that I am for medicines, is that I buy 5 gallons at a time of 99% isopropyl alcohol. Again, I buy 99% isopropyl alcohol, which you can buy on eBay fairly inexpensively. It's not that inexpensive, like $25. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that's the cheapest isopropyl I can buy. Here's an important thing though. If you're gonna buy it and you have to get it shipped to you, because it's much cheaper that way, that the biggest expense is actually the shipping. Isopropyl alcohol is flammable. And so to send it to you, they have to put extra money in the shipping because you're shipping a dangerous flammable product, just like alcohol has that price too. So all that means is when you buy isopropyl alcohol from eBay or wherever you buy it, but again, that's the cheapest I found it, just realize, forget the price, you want the price plus shipping, and then you can get a pretty good deal if you want to buy a bunch, if you want to make it less expensive. So why do I bother using isopropyl alcohol for it? For a number of reasons. The first is very stable. Like other alcohols, isopropyl alcohol is very stable. So when you make a liniment, you have years of it, especially if you don't put any kind of rubber top on it, which can break down by the isopropyl evaporating, breaking the rubber down and then going in your medicine. So, let me come back here. So isopropyl alcohol is stable, and actually as an alcohol, it extracts many plant products really well, including like hard to extract things like myrrh and propolis. Not quite as good as ethanol, but pretty good. So myrrh and propolis, which I'll come to later, probably next week, myrrh and propolis are resins. It's hard to extract and break down resins. So that's the reason I'm saying that. So isopropyl alcohol extracts many plant products really well. So liniments are plants. I'm getting distracted by a mourning dove. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. So isopropyl alcohol extracts many plant products well, and it's stable. And here's the kicker, or one of the positive reasons for using it. And that is that alcohol enters body tissues relatively fast and clean. So now we have to do a comparison, right? So I'm going to come back to liniments, but I'm going to compare them to oils. So this is a trauma oil. It has herbs in it, herbs and oil. And when you put an oil on somebody, it's greasy and can stain clothing. So that doesn't, on a protest, that hardly ever matters, frankly. But actually using it on people on a regular basis. But the other thing is it takes oil, even animal oils, even animal fat oils, longer to penetrate the surface of the tissue to get to the underneath connective tissue, which is what you're trying to reach with soft tissue injuries. I'm gonna say that all again. So when you're putting an external product on somebody's skin, your goal is not their skin. Your goal is the connective tissue underneath the skin, tendons and ligaments, and all the various forms of connective tissue that have probably been injured in twisting and pulling. And so alcohols, so isopropyl alcohol penetrates the tissue and gets in there quicker. It also doesn't stain clothing, which is not, again, less important, but it makes it really easy to put on. It's pretty safe. Don't drink it. Don't drink isopropyl alcohol. Don't smear it on your body continually. That's problematic. It's been, used in the past for fevers, but that's a whole other use that I don't use it for. And that's just rubbing alcohol. That's why it's called rubbing alcohol. So if somebody sprains an ankle and I'm working in the field, I can have a good sized bottle of a preparation of like arnica, black birch, and willow in a liniment base. They have to take their shoes and socks off, which can be problematic in these situations. You might be running very shortly. And then you could rub that on, and it's going to penetrate the tissue. I want to point out that actually tinctures do that really well as well. The only thing is they're more expensive. Tinctures are about 3 times more expensive than isopropyl alcohol. Ethanol, drinking alcohol in tinctures, is about 3 times more expensive than isopropyl alcohol. So the only reason I'm using isopropyl is I'm trying to save money in this situation. And so it's just cheaper and it's safe to put on externally. So, so that's liniments. The advantage of oil, so first, the biggest disadvantage of oil is it just goes bad, right? I mean, oils all are unstable in heat. If you want, you can put them in a refrigerator when you're not at a protest, and they will last for a much longer period of time. But no matter what, oils go rancid. The molecules in oil, the fat molecules in oil, it's just a matter of time, weeks, months, years, depending on the oil and the situation that it's in. They're going to go rancid, where a liniment won't go rancid. The advantage of oils is that they have slower penetration of tissue, and often that's a positive thing. So the liniments quickly get absorbed by the tissue into underneath the dermis, underneath the skin, into underlying connective tissue. Oils will get absorbed, but it's slower. So that means those herbs, maybe the same herbs, maybe you have St. John's wort. Well, not as many herbs come out in oil as liniment. I'm just going to call this liniment for the moment. That's also a reality, right? Alcohol extracts way better than oil. So only so many plants. I have a list somewhere which plants I think are much better extracted in oil, and you can't really heat it up too much to get that popping energy of molecules being distributed in heat, because then the oil goes bad because it makes it rancid, it oxidizes it. So that's a disadvantage of oil. But there are many plants that come out excellent in it, like St. John's wort and arnica and calendula and yarrow. There are many anti-inflammatory herbs that come out excellent in what's called an infused oil. That means I took a plant like calendula and I put it in a jar and I poured in extra virgin olive oil. And then I let that sit for a while, a couple of weeks usually. There's all different ways making oil. And then I strain it, and that's my infused oil. So I'll do that with some arnica, and I'll have another jar, which I haven't needed yet, with maybe a chamomile oil or a willow oil. Willow is only mediocre in oil. Or arnica oil, or St. John's wort oil, or yarrow oil. And then when I make the medicine like this trauma oil, the trauma oil has herbs that are hard for me to read in this light. I'm going to turn my light on, excuse me. Hopefully it doesn't make the picture too weird. I just put this light in. It took me like years to figure out how to put a light on. So this has St. John's wort, arnica. It has valerian root oil. And then it has essential oils in it. And so those are the oils in that. So basically, I don't make them in one oil. That usually doesn't work so well because different things have different extracting properties and times. So when I make this, I have all these different oils downstairs, and then I pour them together. And the other thing that's great in oils, it also works good in liniments, but let's go with oils again, is essential oils are great in there. And so for instance, black birch essential oil is very anti-inflammatory. And wintergreen, Gaultheria procumbens essential oil is very inflammatory. Chamomile is very anti-inflammatory, and you can put them in your oils. And it probably reduces some oxidation, but it's hard to tell because it also just covers the smell of rancid oils. So I see people are asking questions. Unfortunately, today we have 15 more minutes or 18. I'm going to just write the questions. I'll cover a little bit more. Again, it seems like I'm not going to get to specific plants yet. Just going to drink a lot of water. But this will be the preliminary class, and then we'll do the secondary class in a week. So that's the advantage. So liniment, quick absorption, long stability. Oils, slow absorption, which can be very positive. One thing you can definitely do is do both, which I do. I don't always do it in protest situations because the liniments are just easy to slap on, stay with the person, bandage them up, use an ACE wrap, then maybe get them out of the situation or get them out and then use the herbs and the ACE wrap. But you can use both. And often if in a clinic situation, that's what I do. So the liniment, the plant that's in isopropyl alcohol, gets absorbed quickly. And then you put an oil on top of that, which gets absorbed slowly. So you're still getting lots of constituents of plants in you at different rates, which is really helpful. So that's one way that I would suggest doing it. There's two more external preparations that I'm going to cover that are useful. One is good in protest. The other is only good in clinics in the protest. So the one that's useful in protest is salves. So we can do a comparison. So a salve is an oil with beeswax added to it. The advantages of salves is that they don't penetrate very well. Paraffin, hopefully not paraffin, paraffin, which is a synthetic beeswax, another petroleum product, or beeswax, which is a natural product, whichever you like. But the beeswax, they actually make a seal. So the advantages of salves, if you're working with somebody and they're running in the street and they fell and they get your classic road rash or abrasion, a bunch of skin comes off here. And your goal then is to try to stop infection locally and to promote the local healing of tissues. So you don't need anything to penetrate. You want everything just topical right there. And so salves have that as the advantage. They stay on the surface of the tissue, allowing the herbs in the salves, which were previously an oil, to be local. So for instance, if you get myrrh into there or calendula into it, so calendula is not so great at disinfecting, but it's better at cell adhesion, getting skin to grow back. You put that on and you're increasing the cell proliferation, cell adhesion, and also you're just making a barrier to the outside world, so it's harder for infection to get now into this big compromised tissue space on your body. So those are the main ones. The problem with salves is really one of the biggest problems is that they just melt, right? So if you're in a hot protest, and it's in your bag and you open it up and it's just oil and wax over everything. So you have to make sure they're really sealed. I would say if you're going to do a protest, put all your salves in separate plastic bags and seal them. So if they do melt, at least not everything else in your bag gets melted. It's always possible for salves oils or salves to trap in infection. And so if the person has an active infection, I'm more likely to use a tincture or a liniment to try to kill the bacteria. It's usually a bacteria like staph on the surface. But in protest, I don't worry so much about staph initially. The staph usually takes a day or two. If the person comes in with staph, we treat staph. If they have initial injury, I'll treat that. And then if it seems like it's getting staffy, which is extremely common, then treating that. But I'm not initially using anti-staph herbs. I'm using antimicrobial herbs to see if we can inhibit any bacteria, staph bacteria from growing. Actually, that's kind of convoluted. What I'm really trying to do is prevent staph and any other infection from happening. So using antimicrobial herbs in a liquid base, and either an oil or salve. But if you have a really strong myrrh, Oregon grapefruit salve, if you have a really strong myrrh, Oregon grapefruit salve, and you put that on, those are often strong enough to inhibit bacterial growth that might get trapped. So there's that as well. I know it adds a couple of levels of confusion to this. But again, studying herbs is a pretty helpful way to get through this. So so the last one for this, so I'm kind of finishing up here, we have about 15 more minutes. I want to point out that you're going to be giving these medicines away for free, right? I've never seen, I don't have one of those, right? But I've never seen like somebody like, I will give you this medicine for your asthma if you just give me $5 and they swipe their card in your phone or something. That doesn't happen. So just be aware that you're giving your medicines away for free. So how are you going to support yourself doing this? So it's just a thought I had right now. So the last one, it's great, but hard to make in the field. And they're called, there's really three. They're called compresses and baths and poultices. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. A poultice is when you smash a plant and put it on your body. So if you got a bee sting and you took some plantain and chewed it up from a not disturbed area, you want dog poop on that and put that on, that's called a spit poultice. A compress is often used if somebody's injured themselves and you're really trying to use heat and herbs to get in deeply. And so it's a hot tea where you put the cloth in the tea and then put the cloth in the person's body. If you're going to make a compress, so this is a classic when somebody is at a protest and doing something and they're helping somebody, move somebody, and they tweak their back. And their back is all tweaked now, and a lot of pain radiating, upper back, lower back, neck. So herbs can help internally, but often compresses help externally. And so then if you're in a safe space, you can have the person lie on their belly and make a compress with different teas, and then put them the hot water, because the heat tends to relieve the sensation. So there's a lot of controversy over hot versus cold, but the heat will at least make the person feel more comfortable. Cold will inhibit inflammation more. I'm going to avoid this. You can read about heat versus cold, but sometimes the heat just feels good for somebody. So then you put a hot compress on them. And I want to say something else to bring, if you can, and you're working in the clinic, is a hot water bottle. Because after you put that, the towel has to cool enough to put on their body. And then by the time it's cool enough to put on their body, you have like 10 minutes before it's cold. So you put a hot water bottle on top of that cloth, and you have a much better warm extracting period and muscle relaxing properties of that compress with the hot water bottle on top of it. So that's called a compress. Most common reason I use compresses is soft tissue injuries again, and also just tweaking the neck, meaning hurting the neck, back, lower back, upper back. But again, you need a safe clinic space. That person's going to be laying on their belly. Again, some of these protests are going to grow into full-time like occupations. And then these are places where you can help a lot of people with this. So the last one is just a bath. And so the reason I'm not really sure, but I have those basins. I was looking for a basin. I have one. I have 2.5 gallon basins. And the reason to have those is to soak infections. You can also soak soft tissue injuries, but they're really helpful to soak infections in really strong teas. So if somebody has bad cuts in their feet, so I do a lot of first aid in the wilderness, and a lot of people don't wear shoes in the wilderness, which is, it's lovely, and often they hurt their feet. And so you get to cut up feet, and you can put herbs on them, but really what you're trying to do is just try to get all the dirt out of there, and you're trying to bring herbs into the open wounds, staph or otherwise. And so then I like to use a bath. So then I just basically make a really strong tea, and I put it in a 2.5 gallon basin. Recently, I was someplace where they used bread pans, and most people's feet, I have a size 12, and it fit pretty good in there. So you could put people's feet in the bread pan tea, because the less water needed, the easier it is to make tea. And also, you have to clean those things out. Just in case you're ever doing this, is a kind of a different situation, but you can actually, so this is very wasteful, but very clean. You can line them with kitchen garbage bags and then just throw them out after pouring the water out, and then still disinfecting. There's a big problem with baths is that usually like we'll have like 5 or 6 basins that many people are soaking infected wounds in, and they have to be clean, like they have to be bleached clean, isopropyl, not iso, well, I think you could use isopropyl, but they have to be cleaned in between people. So that's another aspect. So there's a baths, compresses, and poultices. Poultices, the plant directly put on you. I don't use them very much. Usually you have to chew them up, and then you have saliva. The person's own saliva for them is fine, or maybe in their family. Compresses are used very frequently for people who have stiff necks, back pain. These happen all the time in protests, right? Also, if you're just in lockdown, hey, you get out of lockdown, your body is just tight and uncomfortable. There are herbs we'll talk about next week that are useful for this. But also just relaxing it with a nice compress, like a chamomile compress. That stuff is amazing. Just feels good. It smells good. You can drink the tea that's not on your back. So it's lovely that way. And then baths are usually soaks, and then you're putting your body powder in. Often it's all cut up. That's the reason that you're using that. So, sorry. I have the constant ironic laugh. I apologize. Somebody's just asking me, the class next week is Thursday, 6 to 8. So as we're starting to close up, we still have a little bit of time. You're welcome to leave comments. You can leave them here. Probably the best place is going to be when Michelle posts it to YouTube, just underneath there. I don't really love hate mail and hate speech directed towards me. You're welcome to make critical comments. That there's plenty of them. I could always do better. But really, you know, I'm a human being that doesn't like to be called out in public for all the stupid shit I say. My first curse, I went all night. I try so hard. Normally, it's just like salty language. But what I'm asking for, what I'm saying is a little sensitive. And I'm also saying constructive criticism is really helpful for me. So I'm saying both of those things. So we've talked about tincture considerations, various medicines. One of the last things to leave off in is how much medicine per dosage. So what I think I'll do is I'm gonna post something on various social medias and also the MailChimp account that I use that some people might be coming from, and tell you, like, I tend to divide dosage into 4. For this, we'll just use 3 main categories: low dose, medium dose, and high dose. So I think it's really helpful to do that. In your mind, it's really helpful. For my mind, it's really helpful because something like Lobelia inflata is a low dose herb. Something like Echinacea purpurea is a high dose herb. Something like chamomile is a high dose herb. And so what that means is you need more to have an effect. So I'll give like how I tend to divide those things. That's one way of looking at them. In this group of classes, I'm not going to cover any dangerous plants. It's just we don't know each other, and I don't want to make any suggestions for dangerous plants to use. Let me go over some of the preparations we'll be talking about next Thursday from 6 to 8. Again, this is all recorded. So these are the common preparations I bring with me on protest. There's other preparations I bring at other times. So capsules, again, we've talked about the positive, negative. I don't use a lot of powders. The most common, so powders are what goes in capsules, but I actually have a bunch of powders that I've made that are nutritional aids. So nothing replaces food, but sometimes in protests, people's stress levels, basically you're extracting their nutrients out of their body during the high stress, calcium, magnesium, and so the nervous system gets all a fritter. And so I tend to sometimes just bring powders. They're separate packets that we just put in water and drink as nutritional aids. But otherwise, less powders. In the clinic, we use a lot because we just put them in water and drink them. And you have to deal with anything but water. Compresses, we covered. Essential oils. I don't use a lot of essential oils. I'm a little skeptical on them. But even with some of the ones that are really clear, their environmental footprint is pretty big. And so I do usually get them organic. But even with organic, it takes a lot of herbs to make, I'm looking for an essential oil here, to make a small amount of essential oil. But honestly, some of them are just so antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory that I do use a few. But in my practice, I like to use whole herbs as much as possible. You can put stuff in honey. There's one big advantage in protests for putting things in honey. So anybody's getting honey, make sure diabetes is not a situation. Honey has a high glycemic index. It raises blood sugar pretty quickly, but you can put a lot of medicines in honeys. And there's two things that honeys are great for. One is obviously sore throats. You've been shouting all day, you have a sore throat. You put some soothing anti-inflammatory, you can put a little tiny bit of black birch essential oil in there as an anti-inflammatory, or you can make some chamomile tincture and put it in the honey and shake it and give it to them. There's a lot of different herbs that you can put into honeys for sore throats and kind of gargle. It's not really gargle, you kind of hold it back there and just let the soothing honey in your throat with the medicinal herbs. The other thing that honeys are really helpful for is that they're really great for burns. So burns happen, you know, when canisters come your way from police, whatever, the tear gas or any gas, those canisters are crazy hot. Avoid touching them. There's no, unless you have crazy protective, useful protective equipment, picking them up will immediately burn your body, will burn your hand. So the reason people do it is to throw it back. So I'm saying just get out of the area as quickly as possible. So honeys are really useful for burns. So if anybody does get a burn from touching something hot, or who knows where burns are, maybe it's getting cold at night and there's a fire and people around it. Honey is really helpful for burns, and you can medicate your honeys. You can add different herbs into honey to increase the anti-inflammatory action and antimicrobial action, that means kill stuff, into your honeys. So sore throats, that's internal. External glycemic index doesn't matter. People are not going to absorb it that way. And so those are some of the herbs. What I'd like to do in my last few minutes is do something that's preposterous. And again, I really appreciate any feedback on this. If you want to write it, you know, to me, please be constructive rather than destructive if possible. And I just want to say 3 herbs. So I want you to look these up. So there are 3 herbs, well, 2 main herbs that could be really helpful for COVID-19 tightness in the chest. So with 3 minutes left, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell you 2 herbs that you should research. So the vast majority I'm working with people who are COVID-19 who often test negative, like way many people. I mean, you could read the test results, but I see them. So anyway, the few people I'm working with who have, their biggest problem is they've been having difficulty breathing for weeks. And the thing I've seen help the most is elecampane, which is Inula Helenium, elecampane, Inula Helenium. And then the picture, I don't know if you can see it, but I can, right? Well, that's scary looking, isn't it? Michelle Marlowe's picture is pleurisy root, which is Asclepias tuberosa. Pleurisy root, Asclepias tuberosa. Those are 2 so once again, this is only for people who don't need to be hospitalized. They're okay, but they're having difficulty breathing. But basically, their oxygen saturation is fine, but still tightness in the chest, which is a common sequelae, a common after effect. Even after people recover from some of the effects of the COVID-19. So this is, you know, this is kind of cavalier to say these herbs, but I would like to give you 2 herbs to consider for this. And so they're pleurisy root, Asclepias tuberosa, and they're elecampane, which is Inula Helenium. The one more herb that I would add into this, but this last herb you should not use if you have high blood pressure. So elecampane is E-L-E-C-A-M-P-A-N-E, and pleurisy root. Pleurisy, which is a condition in the lungs, root. And then the last one is licorice. So licorice root is an anti-inflammatory that's being used a lot in China and with Chinese medicines. There's a lot of information coming from China with Chinese herbs that's really useful. And licorice, though, can raise blood pressure, but also show something. These are not stopping COVID. These are reducing inflammation and tightness on the chest. So with that said, I'm going to say goodnight. I really hope that people got something useful from this. And I encourage us all to go out and make a positive change for people of color in the world and raise our voices and go as street medics. So thank you everybody for being a part of this. I'm going to sign out right now. Bye now.